So the title Strange Fruit is of course borrowed from the famous song written in 1937 by US communist Abel Meeropol to protest against the lynching of black women and men in the South, and which was performed most famously by Billie Holiday. Even though Meeropol was speaking of African American, of black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, the expression strange fruit seems to me fitted to speak about bananas and its place in contemporary racial vocabulary. You may recall the first line of the song, "Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaf, blood at the roots, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar tree, pastoral scene of the gallant South." Why bananas? There are many reasons I will get to, but one for me is a pressing issue of racialized environmental politics, which I think is raising increasing challenge for those of us interested in change, social justice, and anti-racist solidarity. We have entered, and Achille told us about it, the age of the Anthropocene, an age where the action of human beings, us, have finally affected climate and Earth's resources in a way that could lead to our extinction. But if we must ask, as Achille also asked us, what is race in the age of the Anthropocene, I will add what is race and gender in the age of the Anthropocene, in terms, again, of environmental politics. We have to assess the damage in the long durée of racial politics in the environment. In the time of slavery, slavery was a turning point in terms of ecology. We rarely think about it, but it was really a turning point of forests being destroyed. Even in Europe, to build a ship, you needed like 300, trees to build just, a ship, a slave ship. And of course, in the colony of displacing people, of taking out forests, slave trade was also leading to famine because, kidnapping young men, and all places were devastated in Africa. There is even some research today of suggesting that the place where you have the most, hunger-stricken places were the place where you had the highest rate of slave trade in Africa. So the long traces, the long legacy of this beginning of racial environmental politics. And of course, monoculture, having just sugarcane or just tobacco or just coffee in one place, like sugarcane field, I saw them just right there. And followed by colonialism, and against monoculture, displacement of population, new diseases, imperialism also, with the chemical wars. And even before arriving, in the 20th and 20th century, the massive use also of already pesticide. But even in the 20th century, the chemical weapons during the Vietnam War, the consequence of nuclear testing for the population of the Pacific and Algeria. And as we learned also recently from a secret defense studies of the French army last February, that in fact the fallout of the nuclear test in Algeria also affected Mali, Chad, and Senegal. And that we are looking today as the consequences of this nuclear testing of the 1960s. And in the Pacific Island, of course, you had the UK, the US, and French nuclear testing in the Pacific. And in the French Pacific Island, you have to do more than 650 cases of cancer per year. And this is totally invisible consequences, invisible legacy. You have also the consequence we could think about of Katrina for African American in New Orleans, of course, of Bhopal also, and the woman in Bhopal in India, cleaning ship in Bangladesh today. We could draw a map of industrial dumps, of polluting industry. Some has been done, in fact, and we will see that they are more than often situated in poor and non-white neighborhoods. That the concern for the earth and the future of humanity, the threat upon its survival, has become, we know, a concern in global politics. You have even, like green global meetings. And multinationals are entering the field because they are concerned with the threat on access to water, sugar, or any resources needed for their product. So you have like a recent, concentration of Coca-Cola and other multinationals to go green. States also are developing their own green politics. There is also the development of green capitalism, large amount of money invested in research, building field of, solar energy in the south to provide energy for the north. Also new research to produce, water out of salt water. Israel being a pioneer in this story with all the consequences for the population around. We have also NGOs and grassroots movement who have for decades alerted the public on the consequence of global warming, and with the climate refugee, the wars, the privatization of the common, the water, the air, everything is being privatized. I think the only thing we should not privatize yet is the light of the sun every morning. In all this new development, few things has been done on racialized environmental politics in their long durée, and on the question of gender. So what are race and gender in the age of the Anthropocene? And green politics, as we know, are often associated with Western countries or with protecting the earth and the animal. They are presented as neutral, a concern for humanity as a whole, yet we are living in a moment of vicious and brutal reactivated politics of racialized environment. So they are far from being neutral. But I could have spoken of all this issue without speaking of the banana. So why the banana? I thought it was interesting to start from a very benign fruit, and vegetable also, that we love, all of us love, that you give to babies and to old people because it's full of great things. And so to start with a very familiar thing that nonetheless inscribes us in a vast network of signification, connect us through invisible threads to people in different places of the world, from workers to traders, from plantation owners to the women selling them on the sidewalk. I thought it would be interesting to start with this banal fruit, to explore the way in which our world is saturated with this thing, with banality hide their condition of production and distribution. We live among them, and I want to insist on their banality, the sugar, the coffee, the tobacco, the banana, which have entered our daily life, changed our way of living, of receiving, of becoming, of giving gift, our social and cultural life deeply, but in ways that has been done that we must forget where they come from. And retracing their lives, their history, their itineraries, will bring to light an archive of a connected and global history, the history of migration of plants and people, of colonial slavery, imperialism, colonial science, and an archive of the racial and anti-racial politics. Okay, I forgot something. Sorry. I'm not at all, like a PowerPoint person. So I did an artisanal PowerPoint. So if you can distribute the artisanal PowerPoint. And then, sorry, I'm doing it, I forgot. And then, voilà, this also. This is a poem I will talk about. Sorry. Okay. So bananas. So first, why the bananas? Because of its racialized status. The relation between bananas, black, and monkeys emerged in racial imaginary and vocabulary at the end of the 19th century and became pervasive in the 20th century. As late as 1958, during the World Exhibition in Brussels, white people were giving bananas to a black little girl. And there is a picture of it, but so now we have so I could click on it. So do I ding? Do I click like that? Where?
I think it's not yet, not yet on, is it?
C'est pas.
We're going to work on the projector now.
Oh, okay.
You want to show the phone?
No, it was a picture. Okay. So anyway.
Yeah, you can put this on this if you want. Yeah.
Bon? That's good? Okay. So the connection, as I say, between black people. And so there was a picture of a little black girl in 1958 in Brussels, and white people are giving her a banana. She's in an enclosure. And the connection, black bananas, monkey, re-emerged more visibly in 1990s in stadium and in political life. Bananas became again the signifier of anti-black racism. Indeed, if a banana is thrown during a soccer game, everyone will understand that a black player is targeted. Or when in France, children will shout, "For whom is a banana? For the Guinean," everyone will understand that the French Minister of Justice, with a black woman, is targeted. Second, banana production and distribution have connection, as I say, with colonial slavery and more strongly with US imperialism in South America and the geopolitics of race, racialized environmental policy, race and sexuality. The fruit brings together politics, gender, race and class. It's also a cultural and social symbol used in religious rituals and for special family events in many places of the world. The struggle against banana as a racial signifier or in plantation in Africa or South America, the polysemic nature of the signifier banana, its role in imperialist politics and global economy offer thus a terrain for the study of the archives of the racial and the struggle against the no-racial. Few other fruits or vegetables, perhaps except sugarcane, occupy this position as a crossroad of so many elements, and this is perhaps why it's interesting. So some facts, so you understand. Banana is number 4 on the list of staple crops, one of the biggest profit in supermarkets today. It's one of the most important crop grown by small and large-scale producers alike in more than 130 countries. Everywhere, Florida, South America, China, India. On plantation, where working and living conditions are close to bondage. United States is the largest single country importer of fresh banana, and 3 out of the 5, banana oligopoly are US-based. Dole Food, Chiquita Brands, and Del Monte. And bananas sold in Europe and the US are all of one type, and that is important. I will come back to it. It's Cavendish. And I just want to make a little aside, for us, perhaps we could talk about. It's interesting to note the recurring relation between some form of bonded labor and certain products that connected to colonial slavery. How they are, persistent, like sugar, coffee, tobacco, cacao, and banana, as if, they cannot be free from the criminal origin of their production for export. So they are the most important export fruit, really big business, a market worth nearly $5 billion a year, $5 billion, a year. And it's truly a global project, a global community around which battles are undertaken to control production and distribution. And the banana market is highly racialized and unequal. But banana were also, appear in different terrain. We might remember it was even a symbol during the Cold War. Banana was, symbolized freedom and luxury to people behind, the Iron Curtain. And after, for instance, when the Berlin Wall crumbled, us Germans were seen sporting, bearing car stickers featuring 2 bananas, doing the letter D for Deutschland. So banana as a symbol of freedom. And finally, a banana, though it's, as you know, is an asexual fruit, has become a potent symbol of male sex. No comment here. So looking at the banana in a global transnational context, challenge the inscription of the racial in the category of the nation, or that race is only inscribed on a body, that, a fruit could be, also carry the history. And looking at the history of the tropical fruit across time and space in its longue durée, allow us to shift the nationalist focus in race studies towards a more global, outer-national perspective. Right through this paradigm, the history and politics of the banana economy productively interrogates the categorical boundary of the nation in the historical production and subsequent life of racism. Well, before getting in the banana, I want to tell you just a little the history of the banana, where it's come from, the travel of the banana. Who knows about the banana? The travel of the banana? Okay, well. The origin of the banana are complex and convoluted, but like sugarcane, it comes from New Guinea. You know, it was the first place where humans domesticated the banana. And from New Guinea, it traveled, you know, it has spread to the Philippines and radiated across the tropics. And as I say, because they are asexual, they led to a huge variety of domesticated, you know, forms. This is why you have so many kind of banana, except the banana that you buy in the supermarket. And they are all the same all over the world. From New Guinea and the Philippines, they arrive in India, in Indonesia, and Australia, and Malaysia. And plantains were grown in Eastern Africa as early as, you know, 3000 before Christ, and in Madagascar, the 1st century. The plantains certainly reached the African continent between, you know, between the 5th century before Christ and the 5th century after. Buddhist literature notes the existence of the bananas in the 6th century, and Alexander the Great, you know, stumbled across the fruit in India. By the 3rd century, plantain was being cultivated in plantation in China, but the banana did not have yet a global life. It was with a wave of Islam, there was a second rediscovery of the banana around the Indian Ocean world. And as early as the 11th century, there were references of the banana in Islamic literature. And Muslim Americans carried the banana along trade routes through Southeast Asia and the Middle East. And by the 12,000, the bananas really reached North Africa and Spain. And Muslims carried the banana from Eastern to Western Africa. And a third wave of banana diffusion occurred in Asia in the 13th century. And by the 13th century, Japanese were cultivating banana and even, you know, using the textile of banana for clothes and other tools. Sorry. And banana production and consumption in the ancient and early modern world was mostly, small-scale operation and local consumption. So slave trade and colonial slavery were a turning point in that history. By the 15th and 16th century, Portuguese colonizers established the crops throughout Brazil, where it likely spread to the sugar plantation economy of the New World and the Caribbean. Plantain has two major uses. First, it's a very valuable, you know, as a crop to protect the other crop because of the large leaves, you know. So you plant the banana to shade coffee, cacao, and pepper. And second, sugarcane plantations relied upon banana to feed their slave population. Not only banana did so provide a non-labor-intensive crop for plantation workers, the fruit also digestibility and high energy content provided a perfect source of calorie for the brutal manual labor of the cane field. And plantain became thoroughly ubiquitous in Central and South American countries and were naturalized, adopted, integrated in local culture, and you know, it's very synonymous today with certain country cuisine. By the beginning of the 19th century, and especially by the end, of the 19th century, and especially in the early 20th century, shift in modern production and consumption moved the banana to a true global community. So, banana and science. So, U.S. imperialism took a close interest in the fruit at the end of the 19th century, and a new era started. As I say, it's non-seasonal, so it's available year-round. So you can have banana, you know, constantly in the supermarkets. You know, it's easy. And so 4 elements were essential to its transformation into a global commodity: the discovery of a varietal that could be cultivated everywhere and would satisfy Western taste; progress in maritime transport, the arrival of the steamships; 3, the creation of the refrigeration industry; and 4th, the role of U.S. imperialism in South America. So the question of the varietal is important because it's the history of science, the connection of science and imperialism. So the discovery of a varietal to be cultivated everywhere was important and belonged, as I said, to the history of science and colonialism, science and imperialism and taste. You have to find the kind of banana that that all Westerners will love and that could be cultivated everywhere. And as we know, all colonial products, whether coffee, tobacco, sugar cane, cocoa, and banana, have always been the subject of intense scientific research since the beginning of their entry in the global capitalist market. It's not now. It was already, in 18th, 19th century that you have. As you know, botany was a colonial science and very important for colonialism. So you had to find the best variety that would yield the greatest harvest, meet the taste of the Westerner, could become a monoculture, and be protected from disease. And so this is where science intervened. And the huge variety of bananas played against the capitalist research for monoculture, for finding one kind of banana. Because there are more than 300 varieties of banana in the world. You're going to learn a lot about bananas. So there was a... Sorry. So how does that play? So people were looking for this banana that could, be planted, cultivated everywhere. In 1820s, there was an Englishman, Charles Telfair, who fell in love with the bananas that he found in Mauritius. And he shipped a couple of banana plants to someone he knew in England, and the banana passed, from hand to hand, and ended up in the hand of the 7th Duke of Devonshire, William Cavendish, hence the Cavendish banana that we hold it today. Here also, yesterday I was looking at the border, there was a woman selling banana. I look at the banana, they were Cavendish banana. So Cavendish was able to cultivate the plant and create a varietal, and it was recognized in 1836 and subsequently diffused back in the tropical zone and spread from Haiti to Hawaii, Australia, and everywhere. It remained an exotic fruit in American cuisine well into the 1870s. But suddenly it exploded, like 10 years, 1871, that it was, the value of import banana was $250,000, and it raised to 6 million 10 years later, and doubled again, And this why it was important to expand the banana production in Cuba and other islands of the Caribbean, and in Mexico, Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, and Colombia and other places, And then you had the creation of the United Fruit Company in 1899. One cannot speak about the banana without speaking about the infamous US-based United Fruit Company. And perhaps the best introduction to the connection between bananas, race, capital, and imperialism would be Pablo Neruda's poem La United Fruit Company from his collection Canto General, which I have distributed. By the 1920s, the import of bananas was a lucrative and well-established business. And the United Fruit Company dominated the world production and trade of bananas until the 1980s, with plantation in Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Jamaica, Nicaragua, Panama, Santo Domingo. It was called El Pulpo, the octopus, and it found close support in right-wing governments. It was exempted of taxes, helped with the repression of union. People, were forced to abandon the land, to clear forests to install plantation, and to work then on the plantation. So the element that contributed to the popularity of the banana in the US at that time, that it was cheap, it was very cheap, and fruits began to be seen as very important to healthy diet. Third, the banana peel offered American consumers, always concerned with germs, a food that was both germ-free and nutritious, And then you have to enroll, how to get, American to eat banana. You enroll women in the banana wars. That was very important. So United Fruit Company enrolled women and offered, recipes, cooking lessons. There was wide competition also in the United States, for the woman who will find the best, banana cake recipe. And also you had Carmen Miranda. Carmen Miranda, who helped make, South America safe for Bananas Company. She danced and sang surrounded by banana plants, bearing hats of banana. And Carmen Miranda, the sexy, lovely, and unthreatening Latina, contributed to the erasure of the Latinas working in the plantation. South America was fun, full of music and dance, of men playing guitar, a place to go for vacation. And the US white woman could safely offer the banana to her family and invent recipe. The transformation of the banana into an element of popular culture and consumption as a fun, sexy, good for your health and safe fruit masked, of course, the racialized division between the white consumer and the black producer. a division, in fact, which is inseparable from colonialism and imperialism. So the banana entered the US home thanks to US imperialism, which between 1880 and 1930 colonized and invaded Hawaii, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Nicaragua. Enrolling women, the Latina and the white homemaker of the 1950s, to convince people of the importance of the banana in your daily diet, while playing on its falling symbol, was quite clever. Carmen Miranda was flirting with the banana. The white homemaker innocently served a banana cake to her family in a 1950s home. US imperialism was waging war against the people in South America, but the banana was safe and could enter the US home. It was a very pioneer industry. Don't think of it with really firms. On one side, jungle clearance and thousands of workers lost to disease, as well as creating the port, rail, housing, and other infrastructure from scratch. On the other, the world of consumption. The increasing demand for bananas and the lucrative banana trade had massive effect on the production of plantain in Caribbean, Central American, South American, and Africa. Farms. Gradually, one breed of bananas, I explained, began to stand out as the profitable fruit. It was a perfect candidate for plantation monoculture and rapidly supplanted most other bananas. The first one before the Cavendish was Le Gros Michel or Big Mike. The switch for okay, we could get a lot of jokes out of that. Okay, the switch from polyculture to monoculture transformed the landscape of Latin America and Africa in Gros Michel form. The acres of Gros Michel banana crops became all genetically identical. And in the 1930s, so it's quite late, all this story, Panama disease annihilated the Gros Michel, boom, out the Gros Michel, and in 1958 it was a Cavendish. But in the meantime, of course, people were fighting against the banana oligopoly, and United Fruit Company launched the Banana Wars. And the most famous episode is the 1954 CIA coup against the elected democratic government of Guatemala. In 1944, Guatemala, had overthrew the right-wing dictatorship, elected a democratic and socialist-leaning government, and one of the first measures was land redistribution and nationalization of the banana industry. So, of course, the UFC started a campaign with accusation of communism and used the banana, and there was even a film of propaganda, and the film was called "Why the Kremlin Hates Bananas." So was on hold. In the 1916, under the pressure of the IMF, so the Chance and the World Bank, banana multinational divested most of their plantation in Central America and Africa and transferred them to local grower or government and started to adopt the discourse of ethical capitalism. President Eli Black of Chiquita declared in 1973, I quote, we may well be the most socially conscious American company in the hemisphere. The diversification made more and more difficult to fight. Living and working conditions in banana plantation and factories, it diluted responsibility. Company could talk of external negativities, things that were out of their hand. They could not even, do something. They could even protest and campaign for ethical production, advertising on their label that was done without harming animals. We did not know for women and men, but anyway. But effectively, thanks to this, diversification. So that's one of the big things of globalization today, as you know. One aspect of the popular culture around the banana was its sexualization associated with blackness. Not in a negative way, in a positive way. And one of the famous representations was Josephine Baker and her banana skirt in the 1926 show in Paris. Initially made of rubber, the banana skirt turned into a strategically placed, menacing spike that invoked mental association with male organs. A critic, Fernand Devoire, praised Baker's performance with his words, Josephine Baker, our lives on the bank on the Seine were weary and depressing before you came along. In the eyes of Paris, you are the virgin forest. You bring to us a savage rejuvenation. Oh, rejuvenation. Sorry. In her banana skirt, Baker became Fatou. Her name was Fatou. And in the show, she went down a tree like a monkey, with bananas around her hip, to the rim of barely dressed savage men drums, and entered into the life of a white explorer who had been sleeping underneath the tree. Baker's banana skirt, became extremely famous. There were even dolls, with a little dress in banana skirt being sold across Europe by the thousand. And stickers publishing Baker movie Zuzu, where she appeared with her banana skirt, were distributed among food vendors in Paris to be placed on bananas they sold. So the connection between banana monkeys and black enter Western imaginary through savage sexuality, the black phallus, blackness and animality, but in a way that was rejuvenation. And by the 1920s and 1930s, many lyrics alluded to the banana as a phallic symbol. So the Happiness Boy, for instance, had a song entitled I Have Never Seen a Straight Banana. Beau Carter sang in Banana in Your Fruit Basket, and one of the sentences was, let me put my banana in your fruit basket and I will be satisfied. In 1943, Busby Berkeley performed The Lady in the Tutti Frutti Hat, featured dancer riding gigantic banana. By the 1940s, the sexual image of the banana had become increasingly associated with blackness and sexuality, but also very slowly with racist image of the fruit as a creation of the Miss Chiquita character. This was c'est revenu. Okay. Okay. Character for the fruit. Should I do that? Alors attends. Excuse me. So I will go. I click. Just tell me where I click so I don't do a stupid thing.
You want to play the videos?
No, just I will show that already.
You want to show it big?
No, yeah. Okay, that's a picture I told you about in the 1958 Brussels exhibition of the little girl with the banana. And then I do escape. Alors. View.
Guatemala, 1954. Flushed with success, America's secret government decided another troublesome leader must go. This time it was Jacobo Arbenz, the democratically elected president of Guatemala. Philip Rettinger was recruited from the Marines to join the CIA team.
It was explained to me that it was very important for the security of the United States that we were going to prevent a Soviet beachhead in this hemisphere, which we have heard about very recently, of course, and that the Guatemalan government was communist, and we had to do something about it.
President Arbenz had admired Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and his government voted often with the American position at the United Nations. But in trying to bring a new deal to Guatemala, Arbenz committed two sins in the eyes of the Eisenhower administration. First, when he opened the system to all political parties, he recognized the communists too.
Well, of course, there was no even a hint of
next one.
government. He had no communists in his cabinet.
Okay, I'm going to do this one.
Resistance of the very small communist party.
Arbenz also embarked on a massive land reform program. Less than...
Okay.
This one?
Yeah. Okay, this is the Chiquita things.
I say, this is a nasty situation, what?
Quite all right, old fellow. Chin up and all that. Carry on.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say that you really shouldn't treat a fellow man this way. If you like to be refined and civilized, your eating habits really ought to be revised. Suppose I show you by making banana scallops. Take a yellow banana, or even one tipped with green. the banana in pieces about this size. After dipping them in egg, drain and roll in cornflake crumbs or breadcrumbs. Fry about 2 minutes until brown and tender. Then drain them well and serve hot. So.
I'd like to say banana scallops taste to me like very cultured eating. So won't you join me, please, old fellow? For this time I am treating. Oh, yes, yes, yes.
So, there is, I don't think, any need for... I would just play perhaps just another things of a...
Dans un village de la Havane vivait la jolie Juanita. Comme son père plantait les bananes, on l'appelait Juanita Banana. Elle avait une voix magnifique et rêvait de chanter à l'opéra. Mais son père, qui ne pichait rien à la musique, disait « Ma fille a une drôle de voix. »
Juanita banana, Juanita banana, Juanita banana, Juanita banana.
Okay, for those who know, it was Henri Salvador who is, from the French Chanty. I have the Josephine Becker just that because otherwise we're going to spend all the morning. Yeah, where I was. Banana as a phallic symbol entered dancing shows to exotize and racialize women, either the enthroning Latina Carmen Miranda or the savage black woman Josephine Baker, who play with the stereotype associated with blackness and sexuality. The historical and cultural context in which this association, and we can still discuss if Baker was making an ironic use of Western stereotype. The historical and cultural context in which these associations were made was also one of the increasing presence of Africans in Europe after World War I, the revival of jazz, the movement of negritude, the affirmation of a black and proud identity. In the US, it was also the Harlem Renaissance, the struggle against Jim Crow and against lynching. In France, it was also, at the meantime, the invention of the famous banania, the banania person. I think I have the banana. And so there was a tension between emerging black consciousness and the proliferation of colonial imagery around the banana. And the banana, and in France we could even talk about the banana years because, the declination of the stereotype really branded African and European imagination. So I wanted just, to put out, the different things like that before coming to one aspect of this connection between banana and racism in sport. So bananas as a sign of anti-black racism in sport had become pervasive, not only in Europe but in Turkey, South and North America, and not only in soccer but also in baseball and even tennis. Players have usually answered either by ignoring the insult or by leaving the field. But this year, in April 2014, Barcelona, Dani Alves, reverted to humor with dealing with racism. When a banana launched by Villarreal fans landed at his feet, he picked it up without losing its composure, peeled it, took a bite, and got with the game. It was filmed and went viral. Former England international Gary Lineker, who played for Barcelona, applauded quick thinking. Utterly brilliant reaction from Alves, he tweeted. Treat the racist Burke with complete disdain. Danny Alves on him tweeted Brazilian teammate Neymar. Take that, bunch of racists. We are all monkeys. So what? And Neymar and his agent of the Brazilian advertising agency Loduca immediately launched a campaign on social network, Instagram and Twitter. Loduca Vice President Guga Ketzo declared, I quote, the idea was to do something light-hearted, even amusing. We waited for the best moment, and that came with what happened with Daniel on Sunday. Our campaign, I quote, is to prove that to the racists that we are all together. Whether we are black, white, yellow, it does not matter. We are all monkeys. Our idea was to make the racists powerless. It was on one of the biggest racist conversations in years in Brazil and even in the world. So the banana became fashionable in anti-racism. So, as you said, Afro-Brazilians reacted strongly to the campaign. How could someone could have seriously thought that appropriating with humor the connection between banana black and monkeys would weaken anti-black racism? The Association Black Women of Brazil wrote, and I quote, as ridiculous as this action was it itself, the story descended even more into the realm of stupidity when it was discovered that the whole thing was a publicity stunt orchestrated by Neymar and his publicity agency. In retrospect, it's actually not surprising considering the problem Brazil has always had in dealing with the question of racism and white supremacy in a serious manner. What serious attack at racists could be expected, they say, from a whiter Negro, they were talking about Neyman, who straightened his kinky hair? And they continue, and I quote, white Brazilians are unsubjected to being called monkey. Thus, holding a banana is simply posing with a piece of fruit for them. After all, according to Brazilian racial ideology, one day, in the near future, maybe these black monkeys will sufficiently mix their blood until they all look human, that is, white. And the critic Marcos Romao wrote that it was an example of how perverse and playful and cordial racism with death and genocide that is happening in Brazil today is. So criticism focused on the absence of attack against white supremacy, on the strategy of humor to fight racism when racism is about concrete, material form of systemic discrimination, and when being black is to be subjected to insult and threat. A woman even said, and I quote, I see everyday children suffering from being called monkey. It is a great symbolic violence. It's very easy to capitalize on the suffering of black people. I have friends who believe that this is a strategic move, but I think it's naivete. We live in a condition of profound racism. We must not lose focus. Asked about the campaign, Laurent Dubois, author of Soccer Empire, the World Cup and the Future of France, declared, part of the idea is that the humor make the racist seems more absurd. Whether that's the right tactic or not, we can debate on and on, but it's part of a long lineage of response to fan racism. Lilian Thuram, the soccer French star, argue that the only thing that may work is for a side to walk off the field in protest, prompting their team to cancel or forfeit games. And Thuram's point about this is, if you start hurting, that's Dubois saying, if you start hurting the wallet of people who are making money of this, then they are going to find a way to not let the fan into the stadium with banana. Liliane Thuram also said that this should not only be up to black players, all players have to do it, and we will discuss, with this. I want to go back more like now, after looking at that, to the question of racialized environmental politics, which for me is very important. As I say, banana plantation are monoculture. Only one type of crop is grown. This lack of genetic variety makes plants highly susceptible to pests, disease, and therefore large quantity of insecticide and other pesticides are applied to the crop. And the rapid depletion of the soil nutrient because of monoculture requires the application of extensive chemical fertilizer in order to maintain high level of productivity. Agrochemicals are applied by hand or are sprayed, annually, and with people there and the worker living. And when the banana are packed, workers must apply fungicide and disinfectant to protect the fruit during shipment. In many regions, the lands have been so contaminated that future agricultural use is impossible. One clue of the severity of the impact of this chemical is the silence of the plantation. There are no bird song and animal calls because there is no longer any wildlife. In summary, banana growing involves an intensive use of pesticide, and you cover banana bunches with polyethylene bags, to protect them from the wind and attack of insects or birds, and to maintain optimum temperature. And pesticides are there, and they go also in the water used for drinking, cooking, people of the community. For plantation workers and local people, the health impact of extensive agrochemical use, and I don't have to remind you that the workers and the local people are non-white, ranging from depression, respiratory problem, cancer, miscarriage, and birth defect. Thousands of workers have been left sterile in Nicaragua and Costa Rica since the 1970s, and they are still seeking justice in the US court from the multinational. Pesticide use in Central America and Africa has more than doubled in the last decade, leading to increased environmental and health problems. Children are working in this plantation, whether in South America and Africa, and of course they are not using, they are not going to school, and they drink unsanitary water and are sexually harassed. Chiquita, Del Monte, Dole, Favorita, all the big oligopoly are effectively using pesticide and children. And the exploitation of vast tracts of land by banana company are driven out against indigenous population in the Caribbean and also in Africa. The 1990s have seen increased deforestation after a slowing down period because there is, an increasing demand for bananas in the, former Soviet Union. Now we can have banana. We are, free. We can have banana. So in anticipation, in fact, of the opening of the market for banana in Eastern Europe and the formation of the European Union, the oligopoly expanded their production. Even though they are law against deforestation of primary forest, land, and all these laws are frequently ignored. And again, science is intervening because the banana sex life, or rather the lack of banana sex life, is cause for growing concern to big business and scientists. So there is a search for the genome of the banana with the hope that the information will reveal more about the gene that make a banana, what it is, and more importantly, what it might be with a little extra help. So scientists are working with the agro-business industry to find the perfect banana that will grow. And today, for instance, in Martinique and Guadeloupe, the soil has been contaminated for generation. It's not going to end in 10 years, it's not going to end in 20 years, it's like for 3 or 4 generations. You cannot eat the fruit, you cannot eat the vegetable, you cannot eat, from the fish from the river or fish from the sea, you cannot eat everything in these 2 islands. They are dead, the plantation. And these are French colonies. And the pesticide which was used was invented in the United States, the great, place for inventing pesticides. And it was banned in 1970s already in the state and in the 1980s in France, but continued to be used until the late 1990s in Martinique and Guadeloupe. So even, within a country like France, you do see racialized environmental politics. Martinique and Guadeloupe are totally polluted to an extent that if any French region was polluted like that, it would be a scandal. But this can be polluted over there. So when I say, the externalization of racial, it does not mean that not, especially, some other country, it can be within a country itself, of course, as long as you target, of course, poor and non-white population and community. So where do we go from there? I think it's there. Let me throw some remark and question. Who will be the figure of anti-racist politics today? An embodiment is needed for the imagination. We need a name, or many names. We need a face. We need a song. We need a poem. We need a sentence that will circulate, travel, mobilize across continent and nation, like a promise of better things to come, a possibility, a counter-image in the flow of image of fake happiness around us. What are anti-racist environmental politics? What could they be? You have on the one hand some hegemonic green politics today, with all the image of the beauty of the earth, usually from above, so we see all the beauty of the animals, the forests, the rivers, the sea life, nature has beauty without history. Not only the social history, the interaction of human to nature, what we have done to it, but its own history. The sheer indifference of what we call nature to the human condition, What, has its own life, its own bit, What will be anti-racist environmental politics that will take into account that our species is just one among others, living in a planet which has its own life, its own pulse, What will be gendered environmental anti-racist politics? In the plantation, the work has been masculinized. Our representation quite often is of men with machete, cutting the sugarcane or the bananas, right? And we forget about the women who are there. The women who carry quite often, the very heavy load of bananas, 20, 40 kilos on their head, who clean the plantation, who pack them. The women who work as mothers, wives, and as prostitutes to keep the plantation going and the economy going. What could be counter-hegemonic discourse, in a moment where the hegemony is about there is no alternative, as Margaret Thatcher said, that we have to go. And you know how it goes, not through coercion, hegemony, but through the production of an interlocking system of ideas which persuades us of the rightness of any given set of beliefs that are persuasive precisely because they do not present themselves as ideology or try to earn consent. And one of them is our right as consumers. That we think of ourselves as consumer and we have rights, And the question of consumer is really born also of racial politics. I remember, studying, for instance, the question of sugar. The beginning of the separation between consumer and producers started in the 18th century when coffee, sugar, and tobacco entered Europe, and Europeans wanted them, needed them, and they didn't want to know what was happening. Just a little, anecdote about that. In 791, the insurrection in Santo Domingo started. Santo Domingo was providing more than half of the sugar consumed in Europe at the time. So there was less sugar, and there was inflation of the price. There was huge demonstration in Paris of women, revolutionary women, not to support the Haitian revolution, but to ask for sugar. And lower price. So already there, the feeling of that we want sugar, we have to have access to sugar. And it's the right of the people to have access to sugar, regardless of what was the production. And they were certainly, wanting a good price for all people, right? So the counter practice about that, the consumer has been boycott and image and testimony, but we could, talk about, what that. Because there is also, and I will want to end that, a question of struggle of interest. The powerful, I mean, all this oligopoly, they have interests and benefits that are not simply financial. There is also, power, having power. Having power is a very important, benefit of that. And so, how are we going to fight against people determined, absolutely determined, as determined perhaps as we are, but very determined not to give up? And also we have frame narrative around two notions of success and failure. Failure is a vocabulary of hegemony, of foreclosing the possible, what is possible, possibility. It's a category made by winners against the future losers, and setting, having a set of standards that will ensure that all future radical venture will be measured as cost ineffective. So the success will be, cost ineffective, and this question of success and failure. We should drop the success-failure paradigm. And because success for whom? Success of what? Success for what? And perhaps we could think about the notion of defeat. And I want to go back to a quote by Eric Hobsbawm that I, came upon some years ago after experiencing a big defeat in my own life. I mean, the end of the museum project that Charlotte was evoking, 10 years of life that was, erased in one day. And so, what do you do with defeat? And Eric Hobsbawm was saying, in an interview, that he has lived for one idea in his life, he has committed his life to one idea, communism, and he had to live through the defeat of that. And he said, but nothing sharpened the mind like defeat. Nothing sharpened the mind like defeat. That victory will make us, So I say, okay, let's sharpen my mind, because I was more depressed than sharpened. But I thought about it. I thought about it effectively. That in fact, that the question of, the long history of solidarity and the long history of struggle is also the story of our defeated ancestors and of their struggle. And this, the ghost, all the dead without sepulture who fought for us to have this is also out of the spirit of the defeat, that we can dream future possibility. So defeat is not failure. Defeat is the ground upon which we build and we imagine our, possible future. Thank you.